Good evening, everyone. I am Kevin Fisher of the Officer Factory. It is right now July 4th. Yeah, July 4th. And it's a hot one. Yeah. So, sorry, I haven't shaved and all that. So, my age is showing. Alright, so what will today be all about? I am winding down things at the shop in preparations for a trip south. It was supposed to have been last week, but things happened and my departure has been delayed for another whole week. I don't want to start anything new on the workbench, just to leave it still for a month or two. So I'm finishing up what's on there, and in between cycles I'm going to be filming a complete playthrough of a game that I had featured on an after action report, Feudal Patrol. The game is created by what I had considered one of our more senior members of the club I'm with, John R. Buck Surdu, or as I, from more martial background, call him Colonel, as at the time he was still a colonel in the U.S. Army before retiring. But coming from a somewhat martial background, go Navy, I still call him Colonel. Sorry, it's the way I'm wired. My club had helped help him develop this role set. It took him a while to get this all done. It's a fantasy medieval Pike and Shotte ancient version of his rule set called Combat Patrol, which I also have the rules for, and at some point I too will probably do another playthrough of that. Hopefully be a lot more smoother, more streamlined than this ramshackle of a video series I'm doing. Hopefully it'd be more shaved too at that time. Part 1 here is going to be a general overview of the rules. I don't want to do a whole video dedicated to just the rules, because that could be a little boring, especially for me. I will have videos in the description beneath that links to his own YouTube channel, the Colonel's YouTube channel, but he may describe the rules better than I could. I'm more of a on foot type of person, where I describe things on the go. And I think that's how I'm going to do all rules from now on, the same way, as describe as they happen in one go. Alright. So, let's, Feudal Patrol, is best described as a skirmish level game. You got, let's use, Age of Sigmar or Kings of War. They are, for examples, they are, mass battle games where you have massive lines of infantry and beasts and just advance across the table. Feudal Patrol, I guess one could say, is like Saga, for example. Jerry's gonna love that one. Yeah, Saga, or I guess Warcry, if I am thinking right, from Games Workshop. They are skirmish based. But it's not skirmish based where it's individual. Instead, you got once again Saga. You got groups of war bands. Wait, ain't right. The war band is the whole thing. Essentially, squads of 4 to 6 with a leader. Well, a group leader. Then you have essentially chain of command afterwards. So you can have the game as small to as big as you want it to be. It's also flexible enough where there's a very decent selection of weapons that are different. Like spears and pikes are different from each other, which I really like. And there's also the stats. I'll describe that more in detail in part 2 in my army creation. I'm redoing all the stats that from what was seen in part 1 to more themed to my headcanon, my head campaign. What of the world that my feudal Japanese are taking place in. That sounded weird. Sorry. Alright. Well, again, it's all fictional, so I got some freedoms in that regard. But still, alright, let's turn the focus onto the main element, the cards. Alright, this is just 3 cards I pulled out to describe more of the game and hopefully some detail. I do apologize for the heads up looking down. I don't have the fancy equipment to do this. I'm only new at doing this, peeps. Alright, so the unique thing, I hope this is picking up, the unique thing about Feudal Patrol, sorry, wrong system, Feudal Patrol is that it's very generally a dice-less game. The only dice involved is unit activation, but that's randomized every turn. And then there's a card deck. I should have shown that. I'll show it when I'm done here. Describing the cards. The activation deck, what that involves, is described as a double random activation system, which makes it some really unique, interesting games. With the round length, I'm describing rounds. They vary turn to turn, but not all units will activate. Pinpointing what the reroll and reshuffle card is. I'll describe that when I'm done describing the cards, the main cards here. It looks complicated at first, but when it's all broken down, it's really easy to comprehend after a round or 2, maybe 3 for some people. It's not to everyone's liking, because not all units will activate on a round. But this is to simulate essentially the chaos of battle. Well, not everything will have the opportunity to move or do as you wish. It's pretty much mimics the individual control abilities of the group leaders. Alright, so what do we have here? Well, let's break it down. This here is the hit indicator section. Essentially, these numbers correspond to the I'm sorry here, I'm losing my train of thought. To the what is that? I'm sorry. That is M. The melee, I'm sorry. And yeah, these correspond to the melee attribute of the unit card. plus minus penalties and bonuses. Like this one here, for example. This card is really going to be great if you draw it, because no matter what, you're going to hit someone. Or this one, right? You're going to miss. Next is the modifier section, or the column shifts. Okay, well, this one here is for archers. Like, you see this? This is like a one column over. If the target is moving, or the shooter is wounded, or at medium range, or the leader is not present. Each one of these represents a one column shift. The two shift here is if you're shooting at long range, or the shooter is moving. And like I said, there's crossbows, guns, short bows, long bows. And they each have a short, medium, long range stat. So shoot at medium range, it'd be a one column shift. If you're shooting at long range, it's a two column shift. If you're also moving, shooting at long range, that's 1, 2, and then 1. That's how that applies. The next group here is your melee column shift modifiers. It's similar to the archery here, where if your melee fighter is stunned, wounded, or using a polearm in constricted space, that's generally up to game masters or agreement among the two players, or both sides. If it's a 4 to 6 player game, those are fun. If those are polearms in a confined space, essentially each one is one column shift over. This one, if you're Calvary, you get a 2 column shift bonus if you charge impetus. Hopefully during the game I will describe what that means, but if it doesn't, essentially you can move up the unit's maximum movement. Then if you got 4 inches of clear unobstructed terrain, you charge right into the enemy unit that you chose to charge, and it's a 2 column shift bonus. Yeah, during the after action report, when I was filming and playing, wow, the Calvary is very powerful. Alright, and this here is also 1 column shift if the unit is in close order. I will admit, I did not apply this most of the time. So there could have been cases where I could have done even more damage to either side. That one's on me. Alright, this 10-sided die, if for some reason you need to quote flip off or draw cards to see who will do what, like who's gonna have initiative, because there will be cases where you have matching activation die, and this is a good way of determining who will activate first. Then we go to this here. Each shape corresponds to the weapon being used and the damage. Let me example. Let's say I have a sword and it does damage. Well, the swords have this square, and if I drew this card to see what damage is being done, well, that will be the amount done, minus armor, of course, which brings me to this here. this is the hit random. Oh, I'm sorry, wrong one. My fault. This is the hit location icon. The color, in this case, let's go this guy, represents a waist hit or upper leg hit. We go with lower leg hit for this guy, and this guy's hitting the torso. If they have armor, which is rated 0 if they just got cloth, 1 if it's just like soft metal to leather, or 2 if it's plate, chain, heavy armor in general. So, example again, let's say I drew this card. I hit him in the leg, upper legs, waist. Nice. I do 3 damage. But if he's wearing plate mail or heavy armor, then that 3 becomes a 1. Next is this, the hit randomizer. This is for archers. When archers fire, they're not shooting at individuals, they're shooting at the group in a target area. I'll describe it later, but essentially it's you measure the whole group in the line, then you go out to range, and that becomes in the box becomes 1.5 times the facing and 4 inches deep. And it becomes quite brutal if there's plenty of targets in that box. And this is a randomizer. Like, you start from the left, like, guy, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4th guy is hit. Okay, so... Oh yeah, I forgot to mention hit location icon. These shields... Oh, this guy's going to be unlucky if this card is drawn. There is no shield. If they have shields, then it essentially acts as armor as well. But if I remember right, because the samurais don't have shields, so this didn't come up at all during my game. If I remember right, these shields, like large, medium, small shields, I think they can block air damage entirely. If I remember right. I don't have to read up. Like I said, on my Feudal Japanese game, it never comes up. Alright, then we got this here. This is the movement speed indicator. These letters indicates the armor. Like I had mentioned before with the like no armor, the leather to cheap light metals to the heavy metal armor. Essentially, these are your level of encumbrance, LOE. And this becomes more important when I go to part 2, when I describe about my army creations. Essentially, this is the movement speed that unit can move up to. They don't need to move to full length. They just move up to. Calvary can draw 2 of these cards. Like my my samurais, they were I think I gave them, since it's nothing more but lacquer, it's light armor pretty much. I think samurai armor is like 30 pounds of armor versus the usual 60 to 90 for medieval knights. But it provided equal protection. So, that's if I'm remembering right. So in that regard, they were rated medium encumbrance. On Calvary, let's say I draw these 2 cards, it'd be 9 and 4. 13 inches their Calvary could move. But if I'm charging, it would have been these 4, and if I got 4 more inches, barrel roll, boom. I think I'm wrong. Maybe. I just looked. I was wrong. Pretty much, going back to my example, it's 13 inches. If I move 9 inches and the last 4 are unobstructed clear, then the impetus rule comes to effect, which is a -2 column shift. That I got wrong in my last play. Gotta remember that. Okay. This here is the mounted target location indicator. Pretty much if your cavalry is in melee or they're getting shot at by arrows, you refer to the hit indicator. Like, example, this horse is standing but is red. Therefore, the horse would take a wound and is down for the game. And is removed from the play. Which is why I have made on-foot versions of all my samurais. So in case the horse goes down, they can they essentially take its spot. Now, if the figure is hit, then you draw another card, see how much damage is applied. But if the horse is hit and you see, and this comes up, essentially the rider is thrown, and then you draw the next card and refer to how much damage via the yellow. So, ouch. And this here is the cover protection icons. Essentially, if your troops are behind like a barrier, or they're in fortifications, or they're behind windows, they get cover. Or they're in like natural cover, like tall grass or woods. Which is really handy if your archers are in woods and they're fighting out of. When troops fire back at them, this really helps a lot to keep them safe. Next, this heavy red text is the morale check results. As troops take damage, they stunned, but their leaders incur a morale check that they gotta do when activation is next up. And you draw as many cards as there are morale checks, but for one at a time. There's some morale checks where it can just like ignore the remaining, or you gotta add up X number of morale checks for X thing to happen. This I consider the true charm of the game, because just about anything can happen. I had troops running back and forth. Like, I'm running 10 inches away. Wait, I'm gonna run back. I'm mad. Urgh. Wait, are they allowed to do that? Or are they stunned? Hold that thought. Okay, I'm back. Yeah, I was initially right. I could have done all that. Because essentially, what matters at the end of the morale checks is the final position of all the units. But I like the narrative, like ex-soldier ran, and he was so mad he ran forward and such. Alright, and then the final options are pretty much the IP and the unique serial number of the cards. And yeah, well, let me describe a little bit more of the text. Like, I don't remember now. I just said it a minute or two ago. The text here, they could apply to a single figure, to a whole unit. I had just reread, I missed it for the first game, that there are some morale texts where it affects units or individuals with a certain guts rating. I'll describe all that is in part 2. When we talk about unit creation. If units have the same guts, then I was supposed to draw another card and see randomly who runs, or who does what. I've forgotten that. Oops. But that's why we play games. To live and learn. Which is a general thing in life and... Never mind. Getting tongue-tied. I hope I have done justice describing the cards and their various roles. There's a lot more to it, but like I said, I'll describe them as I go. Alright, so with that said, I'll be off to do another cycle of rec, then I'll come back, discuss unit creation. I'm an idiot. I'm sorry. I had totally forgotten the activation deck, which is also essential to the game and rules. So, what are we looking at here? Well, like I said, these are activation cards. And these are drawn one at a time when, throughout the game. And they are shuffled at the end of the round. And as they're drawn, they correspond to the unit's D6 6-sided die activation. And they activate when that card comes up. Each one is 1 through 6. The primary can be blue or red. You only need one. But if you really want to, you can use both blue and red. For get more things moving, but also tends to draw out the game rounds. It's entirely up to you. Black is unique. It can also act as a third card for units to activate on, but if they are pinned, either through morale results of the cards as previously shown, they can only activate on black cards. To really separate who is pinned, the 6-sided dice is replaced with a black die. And that black die is only removed if they roll a 6. It doesn't really come off until the end of the game round. I believe if they don't activate, but they still drew a 6, they rolled a 6, they are unpinned. Let me check on that real quick. Yes, I am right. Units that roll a black D6, 6-sided dice, of a 6 can unpin, even if they don't activate for that turn. Units are also pinned if the group leader is killed, which has happened in my game, mostly for the Ronin. There was a lot of casualties for them towards the end. I'm sorry, I hope that picked up. I was far from my phone. Alright, so that is these. Now, what are these? These are special cards. Obviously, this is shuffled into the deck. And when this comes up, the round ends. However, if this comes up and among the first 3 cards, it's placed at the bottom of the remaining deck. I have done this twice in my game. Alright, then we have elites. Units with a guts rating of elite can can react, but only elite units. And it says only previous drawn card get another activation. This is really powerful, especially when it came to my samurais. Now, green units are, well, again, those who are rated with a guts rating of green. Instead of previous, they, all units but them activate. Given their green status as just militia or, very, shy, not shy, very afraid troops. There we go. The Game Master card. This could be like things the Game Master has set up that happens. Like my last game, it had Calvary sitting on standby, pretty much, the reserves. When things became tough, when this came up, I decided then to let them go. As I was a Game Master, it was at my discretion. I didn't employ this, although it is reasonable that my daimyo, or my lord, could have counted as a hero, thus he could have activated when this drew up. I may do that this time. A random event. I didn't use random events. I think there's a specific section in the rulebook where you can have random events. It'll be like weather, or if you're going fantasy, a random spell, or something like that. I didn't employ this because it would have been too much, and plus it didn't fit into my idea of what the battle would be like. It was supposed to be just a simple ambush, kill the daimyo. There was nothing really else I wanted happening. But I may use this in the future. Oops, sorry. But I may use this in the future. And that's the activation deck. Now I'm done. And I'll see you all in part 2.